Fight fans, welcome to the PBC Podcast, brought to you by Premier Boxing Champions with your host, Kenneth Buhari and Michael Rosenthal.
Welcome everyone to the PBC Podcast. I'm Kenneth Buhari.
And I'm Michael Rosenthal, editor of USA Today's Boxing Junkie.
And as always, we give thanks to you, the listener, for checking in for more boxing chatter which has now seeped into the mainstream thanks to Sunday night's Floyd Mayweather-Logan Paul exhibition. More on that in a second. First, let me tell you what we've got on this week's episode. WBA super middleweight regular world champion David Morrell Jr. will be joining us later on. And Derrick James, the renowned trainer of two current unified world champions in Errol, Spence Jr. and Jermell Charlo, drops by as well to update us on how he's preparing two of boxing's biggest stars for their biggest fights in their respective careers. Charlo, of course, takes on Brian Castano for the undisputed 154-pound world championship. That's July 17th on Showtime. And The Truth, Errol Spence, returns against sports icon Manny Pacquiao in a blockbuster PBC on Fox Sports pay-per-view. That's August 21st, so you don't want to miss what Derrick has to say. You also don't want to miss this week's toe-to-toe segment. Mike and I will share our top 5 middleweights of the past generation. That's 2000 to 2020. If you're a hardcore fan, you're going to love this. Now, hardcore fans and casual fans, we're discussing the events of Sunday night. Floyd Money Mayweather returned to the ring in an 8-round exhibition against social media star Logan Paul. The fight ended in no one winning. I mean, it was an exhibition. I don't know what folks thought. Nevertheless, I saw a lot of different takes expressed from all corners of the globe, which means this probably was a financial success. Mike, what was your take on the event?
Well, it was kind of what we expected, right? It was a glorified sparring session between a real fighter and a guy with crude skills at best. Mayweather started to pick apart Paul in the second round. He landed some genuinely hard punches, particularly some that really stood out to me were the body shots. And he didn't let up until late in the fight. My theory is that him letting up was intentional. The event was about fun and games. I don't think Mayweather wanted to deliver the punishment required to stop Paul, even though I think he could have. I'm not sure about that. Paul started leaning and holding at the end, but I think he still could have hurt him if he wanted to. I just think that would have turned the event ugly in a sense. Remember, it was an exhibition. It wasn't a real fight. Anyway, overall, I found it mildly amusing.
Yeah, it was fun. And you're right. I mean, if Floyd was serious about really hurting Logan Paul or getting him out of there, he probably would have trained harder. It didn't look to me like he did. He did too much preparing for this fight. Now, afterwards, Mayweather was asked if he would participate in actual boxing matches in the future, and he said no. Then he was asked if he might do another exhibition, and he replied, probably not. Mike, should Floyd Mayweather continue to participate in exhibitions?
Well, first, I don't believe him. I think he will. I think that's actually the start of the marketing campaign for the next one. Why not continue to do it? He will have made upwards of 50 million bucks or whatever it is, and he had fun doing it. He said multiple times afterward, I had fun. And he got to be in the spotlight. He got to be on center stage, which is what most retired stars miss, I think, the most when they leave boxing. I think the obvious next fight is Jake Paul, but he has other options, obviously. There's other big-name celebrity guys out there. You just mentioned he said he's done with him. I definitely think that we're going to see him again. The only thing that would make him quit permanently is if he embarrasses himself in the ring, and that didn't happen, unless you think just sharing a ring with somebody like Paul is an embarrassment. So I think, he'll be back.
Yeah, I could see him coming back. Look, I don't think that this is this is not the first time I've heard people say it. I did hear some people saying this, we don't want to see that anymore. I think if he continues to find unique matchups such as this one, we'll be interested again, because why not, However, although he's in fantastic condition, I do think he may want to be mindful of his health moving forward as he, starts taking more shots. He did take a couple shots against Logan Paul. I mean, nothing serious, but just something to consider. Now, getting back to the event itself, Mike, did watching this change or confirm your feelings towards celebrity boxing matches?
It didn't change anything. I'm still not crazy about the idea. It feels like the sport is being abused in some way. And I keep thinking of the genuine fighters who just would love that kind of exposure and money, and almost certainly will never see it. That's sort of sad in a way. At the same time, I'm a devout capitalist. This is about supply and demand. Mayweather, the Pauls, and some other people, they provide something that fans are willing to pay to see. If there's a demand, and there is as of now, I generally don't have a problem with supplying a product, which is what this is. Does it hurt the sport? I don't think so. I still think of it as something separate from boxing. Boxing fans know what's real and what's not real.
Yeah, they certainly do. And, I don't have strong feelings about it either way. I do know that boxing is on the lips of a lot of people who typically wouldn't discuss it. And perhaps that will open the door for them to pay closer attention to the sport. But I get the blowback, from those who feel the Logan brothers don't deserve that. And it's a good point. Who knows? Ultimately, it may help everyone. Now, Mayweather-Paul, the undercard was highlighted by an outcome of far more significance to the boxing world, at least in terms of official bouts. Former unified 154-pound world champion Jarrett Hurd suffered a split decision loss to Hurd-Arias. What was a terrific battle and a surprising outcome. Mike, what were your thoughts on Arias' performance?
I love what that guy did in there. I thought he fought like a guy who desperately wanted to make the most of that opportunity. He was 0-2-1 in his previous 3 fights. He could not afford to lose if he wanted to become a genuine contender and maybe get a shot at a title one day. And that's how he fought. You don't often see a guy fight with that kind of ferocity, that kind of determination. He just didn't give Hurd room to breathe, room to do what he wanted to do. And he was rewarded for that. I think he earned the victory.
Right.
Now he can look forward to more big fights. I know I want to see him again after that performance.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what about Hurd? How did he fare, in your opinion?
Well, if I were to assess his performance, I would say he did okay. He pretty quickly learned that he wasn't going to be able to use whatever boxing skills he's learned over the past year or so. It turned into a firefight pretty quickly, which used to be his comfort zone. And I think he did fine. Overall, he just couldn't match Arias' activity, his punch volume. I don't even care what the CompuBox stat said. I mean, Arias just outworked him and outlanded him. And most conspicuously, Hurd couldn't get out of the way of Arias' overhand rights. Right, he was just like landing them at will. And that might have won him the fight. So obviously the result's pretty disturbing for Hurd. I don't think he looked terrible, but this is going to lead into the next question. I'm not sure where he goes from here.
So where does he go? What do you expect is next for him?
That's a tough one. He's lost 2 of his past 3 fights now, including the setback against Julian Williams in 2019. I don't think he really knows who he is as a fighter. I think this is just my take, obviously. The real Jarrett Hurd is a brawler. I know that didn't work against Williams or Arias, but that's who he is, I think. If I were him, I might move back down to 154 if he can do that, and work on throwing more punches, higher punch volume. So he's the guy who outworks the opponent instead of vice versa. Think along the lines of a Leo Santa Cruz, who's just this crazy, fitness and just throws a million punches. I think that might be who Hurd has to be in order to be successful. That doesn't mean you give up on the technical side. You can be aggressive and throw a lot of punches in a smart way. He definitely just needs to keep his guard up or something. He shouldn't be able to get hit that easily. Anyway, bottom line is you are who you are, and I think he's a brawler, and I think he's going to have to just go with that and roll the dice.
Yeah, good points. I remember earlier in his career, he boxed a little more off his back foot. But, as competition increased, he became more of a come forward, kind of break it down guy. I think he should get right back in the ring. Why not? He's got plenty of time to look at or to see where or what he could have done better. He did say he wasn't pleased with his performance. And if he wasn't pleased with his performance, then there's only one way to solve that. He's had a rough past few months, the loss of his father, plus trying to incorporate a new style with the new trainer. But this loss is jarring, but he can do better, and I know he knows that. So I think he should get right back in the lab and get to work, and hopefully we see him back soon. What about Hurd-Arias, Mike? What's next for him?
Well, that was a huge step for him, obviously. I'm stating the obvious. I guess he's going back down to 54, and I think he's going to be a factor there after that performance. I think he could be a threat to some of the top junior middleweights. Think about it. He outbrawled a big, strong guy like Hurd at middleweight. He'll be facing smaller guys at 154. So imagine how he could do down there. I think he's a legitimate threat, pretty much to anyone. Maybe he fights like a Patrick Teixeira. We keep throwing these same names out, but maybe a Patrick Teixeira, or maybe the loser of the Jason Rosario-Erickson Lubin fight is the next step. Something along those lines. That gives you an idea of the level fighter I think he could face.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. And before I get into what might be next for Arias, I think folks should realize this win was no accident. Had Arias lost 3 in a row coming in, yes. Was he rightfully a big underdog? Sure. But talent was never an issue for him. He made some changes, rededicated himself to the sport. This was his first fight with trainer Ismael Salas, who's a well-respected coach, and it paid off. Leonard Ellerbe, the CEO of Mayweather Promotions, which promotes Arias, made a great point. He said Arias got really good work from one of their prospects, Jaleel Hackett. Now, those who know Jaleel Hackett know Hackett. It isn't any normal prospect. He made his pro debut on this very undercard and won by knockout, by the way. But Ellerbe mentioned how important it is to spar young talents like Hackett because they really push you. So Arias was well prepared for this fight, and it showed. Now, this fight was at 160, but he's campaigned at 154, and as you said, that's his plans going forward. And there are a lot of good fights, out there for him. Tony Harrison. Julian Williams. I like the Danny Garcia fight. Danny Garcia did say that he's considering a move up to 154. That would be an excellent fight for Arias. So lots of options for him. Also on the card, 2-division champion Badu Jack made his ring return. Jack scored a 4th-round TKO over Dervin Kalina. Kalina was a late substitute for Jean Pascal, who, as we all know, tested positive for a multitude of performance-enhancing drugs. Mike, give us your take on the Jack Kalina fight.
Well, Kalina was sort of like a match. It turned out to be a matchmaker's nightmare, sort of. The guy took the fight on really late notice, days before the fight, and you just sort of have to roll the dice and hope the guy can put up a good fight. But he seemed a little bit out of his element. So we saw what happened in the ring. He was holding, and he ended up getting knocked down 3 times. So I think everybody did the best they could, but it was a pretty one-sided fight. Jack looked fine. A little hard to gauge where he's at based on that. But didn't he say afterward that
he's going to cruiserweight?
Yeah, he's going to move up to cruiserweight. So that's an interesting prospect. That's the biggest jump from one weight class to the next. So it'll be interesting to see how he does. But he's 6'1". It's not too short for a cruiserweight. It'll be interesting to see what he does up there if he ends up at 200 pounds.
Yeah, that'd be great to see. And I like the idea of Jack chasing a world title in 3 divisions. Why not? He's had such a great career, fought so many great fighters, and deserves so much credit. Just a true professional. And Chad Ochocinco is trying to be a true professional as well. We saw in the televised opener, the former NFL star made his boxing debut. It was an exhibition, but I don't think he did too badly. Landed some shots, scored a knockdown, I believe. Got dropped himself. I'm trying to remember. Did he score a knockdown, Mike? I don't recall.
No, I don't think he did.
But yeah, maybe in my head when he landed his southpaw left hand, it was such a success to me. But I don't think he did too bad.
Yeah, I kept thinking that if he had started boxing at a young age, he could have been really good. Yeah. You could see even at 43, I think he is. Yeah. You could see the athleticism. He's still really athletic. His jab, he threw his jab out a few times, really quick, long. Looks like he's got a long reach.
And a good chin up, apparently. I mean, he did get up pretty quickly.
Yeah, that was a big shot, and he got up. I saw flashes of a promising fighter.
Yeah.
We'll see what he does going forward. I think that wasn't easy for him. It
No.
definitely wasn't easy for him to do that. So I applaud him just for having the guts to step through the ropes.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll see who else wants to join the fray. I got a feeling we may see a few more other fighters try and do the same thing. For those who tuned into the PBC podcast last week, switching gears for a second, you guys got to hear a pretty long, thoughtful interview with former heavyweight contender and Deontay Wilder trainer Malik Scott. Wilder, of course, takes on Tyson Fury for a third time, Saturday, July 24th, Fox pay-per-view. I've read a lot of feedback on social media regarding what Scott had to say. By the way, if you haven't checked out the interview, you definitely need to on the PBC podcast last week. Mike, what were your thoughts on Scott and the conversation after we spoke to him?
Well, my main takeaway was that Wilder is in good hands with Scott and JD's. I love Scott's passion, which was obvious in the interview, and he's close to Wilder, which means I believe he genuinely cares about the guy. I think that's always a positive thing, and he's really smart. He also obviously knows his stuff. It's hard for me to gauge how good of a trainer Scott is, how good of a teacher he is, because he hasn't done it at a really high level on a big stage. He doesn't have a long track record, but he obviously knows. He knows his stuff. He was always a really good boxer himself. It just seems like he's a good fit in that camp. So that's sort of what I came away with.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I think I like his mindset. He gave a lot of respect to Tyson Fury, which shows he understands the gravity of the task at hand. But he also has unwavering confidence in his guy, Deontay Wilder, and they seem to be taking the proper steps to lead him to victory. There were a lot of questions regarding Wilder's trainer situation following Mark Breland's departure from the Wilder camp, which occurred almost immediately after Fury defeated Wilder in their second bout in February 2020. What are your thoughts on that situation today?
Well, honestly, you never know how things will go when you change trainers. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the guy even goes back to the trainer, that kind of thing. We'll see how he looks in the fight. But as I said, it seems as if Wilder is in good hands with Scott and Dees. And the fact they're bringing in, or already have brought in, a third voice, which presumably means a veteran, a more experienced voice, sort of seals the deal for me. That's really smart. The one thing Scott doesn't have is a ton of experience as a big-time trainer, as I mentioned. Wilder will benefit from someone who's been there and done that. So overall, it seems like I think you said used almost these exact words. It seems like they're doing the right things. He's comfortable with Scott and Dees, and a third person will provide that veteran voice. So it sounds like a complete team.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And look, I mean, based on what we know so far, I think it was a wise decision by Wilder to elevate Scott. Scott is clearly someone he trusts enough to listen to and to be, as Scott said, receptive to what they're doing in the gym. And sometimes it's hard to get, a long-time world champion to do that. Scott's also a student of the game. That much was obvious talking to him, and he has the inside track on understanding what went wrong for Wilder against Fury that second time. I also like the thought of bringing in another voice to the team. I don't think that person usurps Scott, but it sounds to me like it'll be someone who brings experience and can be a wise voice in the corner. I look forward to that announcement. Now, here's something else to look forward to. Our first interview. He is arguably the best trainer in the sport, the man behind undefeated unified world welterweight champion Errol Spence Jr. and unified world super welterweight champion Jermell Charlo, Derrick James. Derrick, first things first, how are you and the family doing?
Man, we're doing phenomenal, man. Just, everybody's good. Just coming out of this pandemic and being thankful that we're okay, and we don't have any lost lives. And everything's good, man.
That's good to hear. You're a busy man. You've got two of your fighters in huge fights and in back-to-back months. You're still working full-time, training the blue collars and so forth. So when do you have time to breathe?
Moments, seconds after the fight. So you breathe a little bit after the fights, man, or like, really I breathe the week of the fight because it's easier because I don't have to do anything to train the fighter. It's a little easier to do that.
Right.
You don't have
Derrick, your fighter Jermell Charlo takes on Brian Castano July 17 in a fight for the undisputed 154-pound championship on Showtime. Give us your thoughts on Castano.
Hey man, he's a very tough, rugged fighter, man. He's a scrappy go-getter. I mean, you have to be in, man, the best physical condition you ever could be in, and be prepared to go to war because he's a warrior.
Right. I'm guessing that he's going to come right after Jermell. Is that the kind of style that's good for Jermell? From my perspective, it seems like it might be, but what do you think?
I think it is. I mean, the people who fight him is when he's at his best. So this will be a guy that'll be right there in his face, and he's going to come to him. I mean, I think that both guys will be tested. You know what I mean? Like, I think Castano would test your level of conditioning, and Jermell would test how good a chin he has. You know, so
very good. Well, we saw a recent photo of Joan Guzman in camp with you guys. Will he have some kind of role on the team for this fight?
I mean, kind of, sort of, yeah. You know, he will. I don't know exactly what it is, but he will.
Okay.
Nice. Looking forward to it. Now, you've also got Errol Spence Jr. taking on Manny Pacquiao in a huge super fight this August on Fox pay-per-view. What was your reaction when you heard the fight was a done deal?
Hey, man, I was very happy. You know, if you could see me now, I'm smiling again. You know, it's like I look at it like this, and even with Jermell too, it's beautiful to see the things that are happening to these young men, and just to be a part of it. You know, just to be. If you think about it, you grow up watching boxing your whole life, being a boxer, watching super fights, and to know that you are going to be able to take part in these super fights. Like Jermell become undisputed champion, which would be the first 4-belt 154-pound champion.
Yeah.
And for Errol to be fighting against Manny Pacquiao, getting his third title, it's like if I could dream, it wouldn't be this good. It wouldn't be like that. No.
That's cool.
You know, I'm thinking that if they win their 2 fights this year, you got to win Trainer of the Year, right? I mean, it's a no-brainer.
You know what? This is what I thought about. And I was telling you guys earlier today, and I've said this several times before. What they do and what I do are 2 different things. Because what I do is, first of all, I train for the fight like the fighter. And I'm throwing punches at the boxer like the fighter. I'm turning, giving angles like the fighter. I'm bouncing around, mimicking Manny Pacquiao, mimicking Brian Castano, throwing punches nonstop. So see, those other guys are standing right in front of them, holding a big round, whatever that thing is, and do a little mid here and there. So we do 2 different things. So they can leave my name out of that situation altogether. Because I mean, we're not. And think about this. So let's just look at it like this. So I think when you give somebody Trainer of the Year, it's not about the victory, it's about the strategies. Look at the strategy we used when Jermell fought Rosario, right?
Yeah.
He didn't let Rosario get in the fight. The movement, the punches. Then look at the strategy we used when Errol fought Danny Garcia, who was a top 5 welterweight who fought everybody else. He looked like he never let him get in the fight. You see what I'm saying? So see, that's how you grade a trainer. Not because the guy beat a guy or he catch him with a good shot. Right? It's 2 different things. I mean, you know, I look at it 2 different things. It's all about the strategy and game plan that you implement with the fighters. Not so much about the outcome, because the outcome, everybody's winning.
Yeah.
But how are they winning? Was this a strategy? Was it something that they go out there and just fight? Did they use strategy to get to the victories? And my guys use strategies to get to their victories.
Yeah. Now, Pacquiao, he hasn't fought since July 2019 when he defeated Keith Thurman. What did you make of his performance that night against Thurman?
I thought it was great, man. I thought it was a good fight. I think that he's had 2 years to rest. So you look at it like he had 2 years to rest. And so he's a super athlete. He's like a Bernard Hopkins type of fighter, or Floyd Mayweather type of fighter. I mean, so only so many fighters in life were able to perform at or after 40. Even George Foreman was able to do it.
Yeah.
Right? But what I would say is that he's a super fighter in the fact that he'll be able to perform. We look for the best version of Manny Pacquiao. I think that to take a fight like this, something about himself that he knows. So I go off the fact we trust and believe he's gonna be able to perform.
Yeah.
So we go out there and we go out for the best version of himself to show up.
Derrick, I don't even know what the odds are, frankly, but I'm sure that Errol's a significant favorite in this fight. How dangerous do you think Pacquiao is?
You know what? I think that Errol is not a favorite in the fight because I think people think that Errol is so basic and so simple. So I think that it's great to be the underdog or the underestimated fighter. Because I'm telling you, because people really truly they remember Pacquiao, and Errol is so slow. He doesn't move. He has club feet. I mean, you hear all these are the things that people are saying. So I think that they think that Manny Pacquiao is gonna be the man. He's so much faster, so much fluid, so many angles, so many this, so many. So I think that I think it's the other way around. He's not the favorite.
Right.
I mean, I don't mean to take your question away. Ask me that question again.
No, that's okay. Actually, I just actually took a peek, and Errol is not a huge favorite, but he's a favorite in terms of the odds. I think basically that people see Errol as one of the 2 or 3 4 best fighters in the entire world, and while people have a ton of respect for Manny Pacquiao for obvious reasons, I think that a lot of people think this is Errol's time, and that this is his fight to lose. But I'm just wondering, is maybe people are sleeping a little bit on Pacquiao's chances of winning this fight?
I think Manny Pacquiao is a very dangerous fighter. And he's a guy that had nothing to lose. Just like Brian Castane, he's had nothing to lose, right? Pacquiao, he's winning. I mean, he's in a pay-per-view fight. He's in the biggest fight since the last fight. Think about this. There hasn't been a fight this big since Pacquiao fought against Mayweather. So
yeah, it's huge.
So now you think about, now he's in another big fight with another big guy. So I think that he's winning either way. But I believe that he's very dangerous. I believe that he's very powerful, he's very strong, he's very athletic. He's very, he has a great team behind it. I mean, I think that the team behind him means a lot. So I think he has a Hall of Fame trainer. And, I think he'll do great up until the fact where gets in the mix of everything he's doing.
Got it. So you just made reference to my next question. So the hoopla surrounding this fight is going to be just insane, maybe more than any in Errol's previous fights. Errol's, if anybody's an even-keeled guy, it's Errol Spence. Is he the type to take all this stuff in stride?
Man, he will. I'm telling you, he takes it in stride. He's like, it's like it's not happening. You know what I mean? Like it's so, it's so big, but it's like it's not happening. And you have to be like that to be on this level, right? You can't be in art so excited with the event that you forget about that you have to fight.
Yeah.
You don't celebrate. This is why people say congrats. I'm like, well, we can't celebrate the fact that we get a fight that we got to go out there and execute. So that's when I want to be congratulated if that be the case. So we have to go out and execute. We have to go out there and be the best version of ourselves. And what's funny, we have to continue to be the same guy that he's been against Danny Garcia, against Sean Porter, against Kell Brook, against Lamar Peterson, against Mikey Garcia. So we just have to keep, being that same person.
Now, you talk about being the same person, delivering the same kind of performances. How important is it, though, that Errol not just win, but make a statement against Manny Pacquiao?
I think it's very important. I think that it's damn if you do and damn if you don't. So, you know what I mean? I think that he's been in the gym since the Tuesday after he fought against Mikey Garcia. The Sunday after he fought Mikey, Danny. Sunday after he fought, he went running the next day after the fight. So he's been in the gym for a while. So I think that he has to show up and show out, man. I think that he has to be able to be phenomenal and beat Manny better than anybody else has done it.
Man. Now, Errol said that for that Danny Garcia fight, he was only 75% of himself. I saw he said that just yesterday, and that the camp was just rough on him. Is that how you saw it from your perspective?
Well, you know what? It's like the initial part of it when we first started the camp, I didn't know his ailments. I didn't know how he was. You know, we were easing our way into it, and I kind of saw where we started out. He didn't go to any physical therapy, so I was the physical therapist. The boxing was the physical therapy. So all of his limitations were limitations that he didn't even discuss with me, and I didn't even know how much pain he was in, until I saw a video that he gave an interview. I had no idea. So the camp for me, from my perspective, was pretty good. And it was like the pre-camp, which was the painful situation for him, and getting close to that point. That's what it really was. I think that the big thing was that the pre-camp, like after the accident. And you think about this, we trained from mid-March to December for the fight.
Yeah.
So it was like 9 months. You trained 9 months for the fight. So, and he only started training for the fight. True training camp started October the 1st of last year. So all those other times, it's like a lot of pre-camps, working through a lot of things, getting his body right, kind of getting him reacclimated to just boxing and just kind of moving around because, you know, he was in a lot of pain. I had no idea until I saw an interview that he did.
So you feel he's back to himself now?
I believe he is. I mean, he's looking great in the gym. He's been very focused. Listen, man, he would be like, say, like on a Sunday, which is an off day. Say, hey, you're in the gym? What time you come to the gym? I'm like, I'm already here. Come on. I mean, so he's like, he's here. But he's just working out, not really, because we don't want to burn out. So we're just working out just to say he's a gym rat. Man, he's a guy that wants to just be in the gym, keep working. And so that's the difference between him and everybody else. I think that's the difference between Floyd and everybody else, is that they can't do enough in the gym, right? And that's true dedication and commitment.
That actually speaks to my next question. Errol looks like he's kept himself a lot leaner between fights this time around. As a trainer, I assume you're really happy to see that.
Hey, man, I'm happy. I'm so happy to see it because it just shows his dedication. I mean, how serious this is to him, you know. And I think that he saw something in those fights previously that he didn't like. And it was pertaining to the fact that, you know, he getting overweight, gaining too much weight. So you spend the whole camp trying to lose weight.
Right.
And I think it's difficult. It's very difficult. And, you know, like it's not like you don't know 3 or 4 months in advance what day you have to weigh in on. So you should be working a particular date. But I think that that's just this thing with boxers. They wait till the last minute, but he's smart about it. He's really good with that, and Jermell is also. But yeah, he's smart about it. He's like not too far from the weight, and it's great to see that.
Great. Errol typically spars with the same guys. For someone as quick and unorthodox, as unusual as Pacquiao is, will you have to bring in some new sparring partners?
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
All right.
A new guy. Some faster guys. more athletic guys, more agile guys. Yeah, guys with a little more movement, more angles. So yeah, we are definitely doing that for sure.
That's good to hear. Now, in your opinion, what separates Errol from the rest of the top fighters at 147?
First of all, he's a fighter that fights, and everybody likes. Like Sean Porter's a fighter too, but he has several styles that he fights, and he beats those guys relatively easy who are the top welterweights. Other than Sean Porter, he fought, and he beats everybody at what they do best. So he fought Sean. I want to fight him. He beats everybody at what they do best. No, I haven't seen any other guy do that.
Yeah. Mike and I have had a bunch of conversations about that. Now, obviously, a lot of folks still want to see Errol and Terrence Crawford square off one day. Do you think that fight is still realistic, or can we expect to see Errol move up soon?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the fight could be realistic. I think that it's something that people want to see, and I think that Errol is the guy who said he's going to fight him. So I got to take him at his word. He's going to fight him, And, we'll see. But I believe that, it'll be I think that the negotiations of this fight is the most difficult part about it. Yeah. I think that you have a guy who doesn't have a following, but so the people are chattering about him fighting, don't go to buy his tickets to the fight. He doesn't have a pay-per-view. Well, he's the first fight in history to ever be on pay-per-view and taken off of pay-per-view. The fight was just when he fought the Mean Machine guy. That was a pay-per-view fight. Took it off pay-per-view. So it's like, I think that you have to really understand and realize your own personal situation. The only negotiating power you truly have is your fan base and your ticket sales or your pay-per-view buys. Nothing else matters.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll see.
We'll see.
Derrick, another big fight, really big fight that was recently announced was the third bout between Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. Do you think Wilder can flip the script in this fight, and what would he need to do, in your opinion?
I think that I've been seeing little clips of him, man. He's been looking really good. I think that he did what was good for him, and he's looking really well. I mean, if he can execute what he's been doing, I think it'd be pretty interesting. I think that, what in the second fight, what Fury did was he showed that he really wanted to win. He went and got a trainer, right? Another trainer. So I think that with Deontay expressing and showing really what he wanted to do, I think it's good. I mean, I think that he can flip the script. I think he can get him the big puncher, and if he's able to deal with everything else that Fury's doing, I think he'll be successful. The most unfortunate part about it to me is that I won't be able to make the fight. So, selfishly.
Right.
Right.
You got a lot going on.
That's for sure. Another one of your fighters, Frank Martin, delivered a very impressive performance a couple of months back. Can you speak about how, he came to you, what your initial impressions were, and so forth?
Let me tell you. So Frank Martin is a guy that my brother had been working with, my younger brother. He said, man, I got this guy I want to let you see. He's a good fighter. And I watched the video of Frank, and I could watch his fight. Couldn't watch it. Too much show, it was too much pizzazz, it was too much. And man, I can't watch this fight, man. So when he came to Dallas and started training at my gym, I wasn't training him. I was just like in the gym, he'd be there, my brother be working with him. Wasn't a big deal to me. Then one day his cousin called me, Jalen, Jalen Smith called me. And Jalen and myself and I talked to Errol. And I said, I told him I'm going to meet with Jalen and, Frank. Are you interested in signing Frank? He said, I like Frank a lot. So I said, okay, then I go talk to him. So I went and talked to him, man. Listen, he's interested. And we kind of went from there. And I said, okay, I talked to him, and I said, okay, I could start working with you. And that's how it started. Just from that conversation. It was right before Corona, because right before everything shut down, and we were at a restaurant. No mask on, no anything. So it was like, I remember that was last. And after that, it kind of just all kind of fell down. But, yeah, we agreed, and I trained him. And, man, he's looking good. He's looking really good. He's name's ranked number 4 in the world. So he's probably in line for a world championship fight pretty soon.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Do you know when we might see him? Or is he waiting for that title shot?
No, he's going to fight on Errol's on the card, I believe.
Well, there you go. Okay.
He's fighting on Errol and Manny Pacquiao, man. It's like
that's awesome.
Getting these guys ready for the big time.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, getting back to you, we mentioned your full-time job, training all these fighters. Where does your work ethic come from?
It comes from the desire not to be poor.
I love that.
Being honest, I said that. And really what it is, I have this thing about running towards the light. If you're in darkness, I have this belief of running towards the light, and I saw the light. I mean, from the darkness, from being poor, from being this and being that, and see the light, and I just keep running towards the light. And that's basically all it is. I mean, the only way you truly get to where you are in life is you have to work for it, and I believe that. And that's really what it is. I mean, I always say that success in boxing, or success to me in boxing is like dating a woman. The same thing it took you to get the woman, the same thing it takes to keep the woman. So I still keep my jobs. I have all the jobs I had all the years. I'm training Errol, and it's like, and you just got to keep running towards the light, man.
Man, I hate to add another potential job to your plate, but you're always a great interview. Have you considered that at some point you may transition to being a commentator for fights?
You know, I wouldn't mind that. I did a little bit, with Brian Custer like years ago. Really, it was like right after Jermell won the world title. The next week, I commentated in San Antonio with Brian Custer. Listen, I would love to, because, I mean, I think that's just another avenue. I think that you have to be able to diversify yourself. You have to be able to do a lot of things. And if the guy who wins Trainer of the Year from several, couple sanctioning bodies and Sports Illustrated, if he can't talk about boxing, then he shouldn't be, doing what he's doing. I think I could do a little bit of it.
Yeah, I think you can. Well, you're doing a lot now. We know you're a busy guy. So, Derrick, thank you so much, as always, for joining us. We wish you nothing but the best with your big fights ahead, and we look forward to having you back on afterward.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You may have put the word out, commentary.
It's out. It's out. This will put it out.
Right. We'll keep banging the drums for it.
Man, I appreciate that, guys. Thank you so much.
Take care, Derrick.
Man. Take care, Derrick. All right, it's time for Mike and I to go toe-to-toe. This week, we're naming our top 5 middleweights of the past generation. That's of the past 20 or so years, from 2000 to 2020. We unveil this as we prepare to watch the top middleweight today, in my opinion, a man carving out his own legacy. Jermell Charlo. Charlo defends his WBC World Middleweight title against Juan Montiel Saturday, June 19th on Showtime. But for now, we're looking at the past 20 years. We're going to go in descending order this time. Mike, who is your number uno?
Okay, well, this isn't going to surprise anybody, and we're going to have the same one. Bernard Hopkins. Oh, yeah. He was 10-2 as a middleweight from 2000 on, which was the latter part of his remarkable middleweight title run. That included victories over guys like Keith Holmes, Felix Trinidad, and Oscar De La Hoya, as well as other top contenders. He lost his titles to Jermaine Taylor after he had turned 40. I'd actually forgotten that he was 40 for both of those fights, but he was. He lost a rematch to Taylor. Both those fights were close and controversial, especially the first one. I think a lot of people thought Hopkins won the first one. Anyway, Hopkins has to be number one here. He's the middleweight standard for the current crop of fighters. He's a legend.
Yeah, he's my number one too. And for everything you just said, and I mean, the guy beat Felix Trinidad during this over the past 20 years. Howard Eastman, Oscar De La Hoya, Keith Holmes, and William Joppy. Look, I thought he won the first Jermaine Taylor fight. I had the second one a draw, but I thought he won the first Jermaine Taylor fight. And all of those fights were outstanding performances, given his age. Boxing wise, I think he's the clear number one. Let's go to number two. I'll kick this one off. My number two is Saul Canelo Alvarez. I know he wasn't at 160 very long, but his two big wins there are outstanding as far as I'm concerned. Gennady Golovkin and Danny Jacobs. I take those two wins over pretty much any other from the resumes of those I've listed below him. It's unfortunate he didn't stay at 160 very long. I'd love a fight between him and Jermell Charlo, but hopefully we see that still one way or the other.
Well, technically he had more than two because
right.
The Cotto and Khan fights were middleweight titles.
Cotto's another good win as well. Yeah,
and Khan too. He's on my list, so I'll talk more about.
And who's your number two?
Senor Alvarez. My number two is Gennady Golovkin. He's fought his whole career at 160 or just a tad above in a few fights. So it was easy to sort of assess his record. He had that amazing run of 23 straight knockouts, a lot of them against good fighters during his first run as a champion. He never had a defining win, but still that was pretty damn impressive. And don't forget, most people thought he beat Canelo Alvarez in their first fight, which, if he'd gotten the win, that would have been really changed the way he's perceived now, I think. The second one was really close, too. So basically, he fought Alvarez on even terms in two fights, which says a lot about him. And he ended up regaining a major title. I think those are Hall of Fame credentials.
Yeah, he's my number three, and I might as well explain why while we're on topic. It's kind of crazy to think he still holds a world title, although I don't think he's as formidable as he once was. Still a threat, though. Golovkin, for me anyway, for the rest of the list, as you'll see, he's sort of the antithesis of most of the others on my list. He had a much longer reign, but not quite the same caliber of victories. Look, he had a great run at 160, incredible knockout streak, which you mentioned, 23 in a row. Now, some people might feel he's a little low at number three on my list, but I think the names above him are more deserving. I mean, Golovkin didn't beat the biggest of names during his title reign, and his power wasn't as terrifying against top 160 pounders as much as it was against others. Although I remember, during the height of his reign, some scribes swearing that cruiserweights and heavyweights needed like flak jackets to spar with him, all kinds of stuff. And look, he is champion once again, but I honestly thought Sergey Deverenchenko beat him. In fact, you could make a case that he lost to both Deverenchenko and Danny Jacobs. However, you could also make a case, as you pointed out, that he beat Canelo Alvarez in the first fight. Nevertheless, one of the best fighters at 160 in recent memory.
So my number three is, we're not really that different. My number three is Canelo Alvarez. Okay. He's only 4-0-1 as a middleweight, as we've sort of discussed here. But he has victories over Miguel Cotto and Amir Khan at 155 catchweight, technically middleweight, and Golovkin and Danny Jacobs, as well as a draw with Triple G. Now, I think I have a strong argument putting Alvarez below Golovkin because the vast majority of observers thought that Golovkin beat him in the first fight. So really, he should be 1-0-1, or I'm sorry, he should be 1-1, although even the second fight was a close fight, but he should be 1-1 against Alvarez. So they should be almost like 2A and 2B, really.
Yeah, it's very close.
Anyway, he fought enough at middleweight to make a strong impression, Canelo Alvarez.
Yeah, yes he did. He had, some excellent wins, Golovkin, Cotto, Danny Jacobs. It's good stuff. What can you say? All right, who you got at number four?
Number four, maybe this will be a surprise, but after looking at the resumes, it just sort of seemed obvious to me, Jermaine Taylor. You have to give Taylor credit for dethroning Hopkins and then beating him a second time, even though Hopkins was 40 years old, because as we know, Hopkins was still good 10 years later. So he was a really good fighter at 40 years old. He also drew with Winky Wright, who's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
So that I thought that was an impressive performance, and he beat guys like Raul Marquez, William Joppy, and Corey Spinks. He ended up losing his title to Kelly Pavlik when Pavlik was at his absolute best, which sort of marred his run at middleweight to some degree. But I think Taylor deserves respect for what he did at the weight.
I think so too. I thought he was, the second fight with Hopkins was very impressive to me. Although I scored it a draw, I was not expecting it to be that close. I thought he lost the fight to Winky Wright, and I honestly thought he lost the fight to Corey Spinks as well. And I seem to recall after he won the title, he fought a lot of names, but they were all mainly fighters from the 154-pound division. Winky Wright actually being one of them. So I kind of downgraded him on that, but he was absolutely in consideration when I was making this list. Now, my number 4 is Sergio Martinez. Forget middleweights. Sergio Martinez is one of the best fighters of the past 20 years when you factor in what he accomplished at 154. And at 160, he had the title-winning victory over Kelly Pavlik. Also, that crazy knockout of Paul Williams. A couple solid wins as well. Beyond that, a prime Martin Murray, Matthew Macklin was a tough fight. He seems to have a really bad knee issue, which could have played a factor when he lost the title to Miguel Cotto. But Mike's still a very impressive resume.
Yes, indeed. Happened to be one of my favorite fighters during that period, and he's on my list. So I'll tell you more when I give you my next pick.
Well, what's your next next pick? It's actually
not as obvious as you might think. I'm gonna acknowledge my wishy-washiness. I have actually a tie for 5. I have 2 guys. So the first one is Sergio Martinez. He had a short but dramatic run at 160. He was a late starter. I think he started boxing at like 20, which sort of like goes in the face of everything you've learned about boxing, that you can't start late and have success, but he obviously did. He got screwed in a draw with Kermit Cintron, who was pretty good at that time. Yeah. Lost a majority decision to Paul Williams, who was incredibly hot at that time. Beat Kelly Pavlik to win 2 titles. You mentioned it earlier. He stopped Williams with just an epic punch in the second round of their second fight, and then made several more defenses. Now, unfortunately, you mentioned the knee. He injured his knee against Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. really badly. He was never the same after that. I think I'm really confident that he would have beaten Miguel Cotto in their 2014 fight had he not been a one-legged fighter. He was basically a one-legged fighter in that fight, which is really kind of sad because I think he still had a lot of fight left in him when that happened.
Yeah, it is. I don't know if he would have beaten Cotto was on another level that night, but it was so clear.
Yeah, he was on another level because the guy was
possibly
had a peg leg.
yeah, it was clear that.
Go back and watch it. He couldn't even move. Yeah, he couldn't move. Yeah.
So I obviously would have been a lot better fight, and maybe Martinez wins. Although, who knows? I mean, who knows what would have happened? What about your number?
My tie?
Yeah.
I had to get this guy in there. Maybe overlooked a little bit, but really accomplished a lot. Felix Sturm. He was an Olympian. He actually lost. I think he lost to Jermaine Taylor in the after he won 3 fights in the Olympics, I think, and then lost to Taylor. So he's a real good amateur, and he'd already won a title, but he sort of burst onto the international scene in a close decision loss to Oscar De La Hoya in 2004.
He won that fight.
Yeah, right, which I think most people believe that Sturm deserved to win that fight. And then he went on to hold multiple middleweight titles over the next decade or so. Now, he fought primarily in his native Germany, but he was very, very successful there and in Europe. Really good fighter for a really long time.
He really was, and you just reminded me of that Oscar fight. That honestly was one of the worst decisions I've seen.
Well, it was I thought it was a close fight.
I thought Oscar. I didn't think Oscar did much. I mean, he came on. I don't know what he did in that fight. I just felt like he was out jabbed. His punches didn't carry the same pop.
I think Sturm surprised him. I just thought
no question.
He thought he was just some sort of European guy who wasn't going to give him much of a problem, and he gets there and he's like, "Holy crap, this guy's good."
Yeah, that was not surprising decision, but not one that I agree with. Now, my number 5 was Kelly Pavlik. Now, Pavlik, one of my favorite middleweights. Period. Personally, I feel like the Pavlik who lost to Sergio Martinez just wasn't the same fighter of a year or two before. Perhaps moving up to face Bernard Hopkins, where he lost his undefeated record in resounding fashion. Perhaps that may have done something to him. Maybe it was the weight fluctuations. I believe he didn't have the greatest habits outside of the ring back then. But when he returned to middleweight following the Hopkins loss, he wasn't the guy who just bulldozed his way to the top of the division. That guy to me was a pound for pounder. He had a great jab, one of the best in the sport. He had power in both fists. He could box while coming forward. He could fight at long range on the inside. I mean, Pavlik was something else. And he took on some really tough contenders and defeated them before he got a title shot. Edison Miranda, Bronco McCart. Then he faces Jermaine Taylor for the title, gets up from a second round knockdown to grind Taylor down, stop him in 7. That was a great win. Then he moves up to face Taylor in the rematch, moved back down, and then moved up even higher to fight Hopkins, lost, and then back down, and wasn't the same after that. But what a run Pavlik had.
Yeah, you know what? After listening to you, I'm thinking maybe I made a mistake leaving him off my list, to be honest. It's weird because I thought of Kelly. I really he was one of my favorites too at the time. But I thought of him kind of as a shooting star. It's like he had his moment and then he was gone, kind of thing. But the way you laid the way you laid it out, though, he did accomplish. I'm looking at his record right now. He did accomplish a lot. He beat my number 4 guy, twice. Jermaine Taylor beat Edison Miranda when people thought Miranda was still pretty good.
Right. Miranda was favored to win that fight, probably.
But in retrospect, we know that Miranda wasn't that great, but he was like a big, strong, tough guy.
Right.
He could. Excuse me. He could have been on my list too. Quite a few good middleweights over the last 20 years.
Yeah, quite a few, and hopefully we see quite a few more.
Charlo will be on the list at some point.
Charlo will absolutely be on the list, it looks like. Can't wait to see his next title defense. All right, it's time to bring in our next guest. At just 23 years old and only 4 fights into his pro career, he's already captured the WBA World Super Middleweight title, the regular title, and he's considered one of the hottest young fighters in the game today, David Morrell Jr. David, how has camp been for your showdown versus Mario Cazares on June 27th?
No, el campamento ha sido, tú sabes, bastante todo bien. Hemos tenido ya 2 sparring. Viene otro en camino. So, todo ha salido bien, gracias a Dios hasta ahora. Estamos bien concentrados, bien enfocados en el trabajo que queremos hacer el 27 de junio.
We're doing great, focused on the work that we want to do on June 27th, and the sparrings have been great. We just finished with one, another one on the way, and just taking it day by day, being really focused on what we need to do to be successful.
What can you tell us about Cazares? What are your thoughts on him as a fighter?
No, como oponente, Cazares, contra otro rival, lo veo bien. Pero contra mí son cosas muy diferentes.
Cazares is a good fighter. He has earned everything he's gotten, but with me, it's going to be different because his style blends perfectly into mine. And you know what they say, styles make fights. So I fully believe that I have what it takes to come out victorious on June 27th because what he does is what I prevent really well.
No, yeah, Cazares is good boxing, good boxing, good job, so good move. It's good guys.
Got it. So this is only your 5th pro bout. How do you feel about how you've been developed as a pro so far?
No, comparado con la primera pelea que tuve, he desarrollado mucho lo que es la habilidad sobre el ring y sobre todo más lo que es los movimientos, ¿no? Y la táctica de aquí de profesionalismo.
I feel like I have improved a lot, especially if when you think about the movement and the tactics that I've learned as I've gone on. Those were the main points of progress for me.
Yeah, but amateur everything different, So it's point for point, and pro is the more power, it's different boxing.
Okay, you just answered my next question, so I'll go to the one after that. You went the full 12 rounds when you outpointed Lennox Allen last August. What was that like for you to go 12 rounds?
No, so I feel good. And the 3 rounds are little tight, but different. I feel good. So my preparation is everything good. My conditions are good, so no problem in 3 rounds.
David, you began boxing at the age of 9 in your native Cuba. What attracted you to the sport?
Mi hermano mayor fue que una vez lo vi en televisión boxeando y le pregunté a mi madre por qué tenía el mismo apellido que yo, me dijo que era mi hermano y bueno, de ahí fue mi primera inspiración para empezar en el boxeo.
My older brother was my biggest influence, actually. I saw him on TV fighting, and I asked my mom, why does he have the same last name as I do? And she told me, he's your brother. So ever since then, I've wanted to follow in his footsteps.
What point did you realize that you were good at boxing? Like, hey, I'm good at this.
Desde que empecé.
Since I started.
So obviously you had a great amateur career. You were 135-2. When did you realize you needed to leave Cuba to go to America, and how difficult was that decision?
Bueno, la verdad fue, tú sabes, súper difícil porque tuve que dejar todo atrás, dejar a mi mamá, a mis hermanos pequeños. Ahora no, porque ahora ya están grandes, pero tuve que dejarlo a ellos atrás, ¿sabes? Pequeños, tuve que dejar a mi familia, ¿sabes? Completa. So, fue bastante difícil porque, tú sabes, como somos los latinos, estamos acostumbrados a estar siempre con la familia, ¿no? Y no tenerla cerca y estar solo aquí, solo con 19 años, me fui del país. So, fue algo muy, muy difícil, la verdad.
The hardest part it was really hard. The hardest part for me was leaving my little brothers, who obviously are now older, but by then my family, my little siblings, they were really little. My mom was there, and I was only 19 when I left. And as you know, the Latin culture is very family oriented, so you have no idea how hard it was for me to be torn apart from everyone that I love. Yeah. But it was definitely one of the hardest things I've ever had to do.
Wow. Can you walk us through exactly how you got to America?
Yo me pasé un año, 1.5 en México, y ahí me contacté una persona, Alexis Ferrer, me contactó con Luis de Cuba Senior, y ahí fue cuando él se interesó por mí, me ayudó mucho el tiempo que estuve allá, y ahí aplicamos para la visa, y ahí fue cuando me incorporé el 15 de julio aquí en los Estados Unidos, gracias a Dios.
Ok, pero a ver si entendí bien. 1 año y medio en México y después ¿qué fue entre México y la visa? Te cortaste un poquito ahí.
Sí, pero, ¿sabes? En México me pasó 1 año y medio por otros problemas, pero sí, después de ese año y medio vine para acá, para Estados Unidos, por una visa P1, ¿sabes? Una visa normal, una visa.
First he left for Mexico, and then after spending between a year and a half over there, he was able to come to the U.S. with his visa.
Oh. Okay. Do you have any doubts now that you made the right move to leave Cuba and come to the United States?
No, nunca tuve duda porque ya me habían dicho quién era él, the best, you know. Y dije, okay, si es mejor entonces, let's go.
Right? I mean, he never had any doubts. He wanted to be the best and he wanted to come here.
Do you feel your training in the Cuban system gives you an advantage over pretty much anybody that you face?
No. Yo pienso que no, porque eso no tiene nada que ver, eso viene con la persona, eso depende del boxeador. Hay muchos boxeadores que no son cubanos y han sido los mejores del mundo, incluso leyendas, ¿entiendes? Pienso que no tiene nada que ver. Ayuda, pero no tenemos mucho que ver.
I don't think, the nationality doesn't really have much to do with anything at all. I mean, there have been Cuban fighters that were the best in the world, just like other boxers that weren't Cuban were the best in the world. It comes down to your foundation and what you're able to achieve as a boxer, regardless of where you come from.
That's a great point. Now, you live and train out of Minnesota. What made you go to Minnesota when you arrived in the U.S.?
Ya no, eso, algo curioso. No, fue que Luisa primero me dijo que si quería ir tenía 3 opciones, California, Las Vegas o Minnesota, pero que aquí iba a aprender el inglés más rápido. Y dije, bueno, ok, entonces quiero ir para allá porque quería aprender rápido el inglés.
It was actually a curious choice that I had to make because I had 3 options: California, Vegas, or Minnesota. But I asked, where am I going to learn English the fastest? And Minnesota was the answer, so I went there.
Yeah, pero no, the one problem question, what up? I said, no, it's very, very cold. Oh,
Right.
no problem. Yeah, hey, man, two months in Minnesota, hey, come back home, man. Damn, it's very, very cold.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, damn. Not like the cold, man.
Now, compare that. Cuba and Minnesota couldn't be much more difficult. So was it difficult to adjust, or are there some similarities?
¿Cómo? Repite una pregunta, no.
Que, o sea, Cuba y Minnesota tienen, o sea, no podrían ser más distintos, ¿no? ¿Qué fue lo más difícil de tu adaptación a Minnesota?
Oh, el frío.
El frío no, pero además del frío, ¿qué?
Oh,
O sea, que-
además del frío, ¿sabes? El idioma que aquí todo el mundo habla inglés, ¿sabes? No es como en Las Vegas, California o otros lugares que hay un poco más de latino, ¿no? Aquí casi todo, muy pocos latinos aquí y todo el mundo habla inglés.
The hardest thing really, regardless of the similarities in weather and everything else that have Cuba and Minnesota, it was the sheer fact that there weren't any Latin people in Minnesota. If I had gone to California or Vegas, I would have been surrounded by them. But in Minnesota, I kind of felt a little alone in that end.
Got
I
it.
can imagine.
Yeah. So, David, you work with the father-son tandem of Sankara and Adonis Frazier, who also train welterweight champ Jermell James. Can you tell me what it's like working with them?
No, la danza fue bastante. Al principio un poco, al principio no diría difícil, pero no tampoco fácil, porque por el idioma no nos entendíamos, pero ya, tú sabes, han pasado 2 años, ¿no? Y ya nos entendemos ya bastante mejor. Ya la comunicación en el ring, en el entrenamiento es súper, la verdad, me encanta tener con ellos porque, ¿sabes? Es súper la comunicación.
I love working with them. In the beginning, it was a bit tough because of the language barrier, but over time, we have gotten to understand each other so well. And now the communication, both on and off the ring, could not be better.
Fantastic. The 168-pound division is one of the hottest in boxing. How far away are you from challenging the Canelos, the Caleb Plants, the David Benavideses, and so forth?
Es que yo nunca me he sentido lejos. Yo me he sentido simplemente cerca de lo que estoy esperando en mi momento exacto.
I'm never far away. I feel close. I'm just waiting for my opportunity.
What is it about David Morrell that would lead him to victory over all of those guys?
Simplemente divertirse sobre el ring.
The fact that I have fun when I step on the ring, that's my thing. I have fun.
So you don't feel any pressure or get nervous when you fight?
O sea, que no sentís presión o te pones nervioso cuando...
No. La verdad siempre, ¿sabes? Siempre estoy, ¿sabes? Escuchando música, riéndome, bailando, ¿sabes? Es mi temperamento, you know, ¿sabes? Siempre soy así.
Not really, no, because it's my temperament where, I'm always listening to music, dancing, laughing. That's just the way I am.
Oh.
Y más cuando confío en mi preparación, como confío ahora. Y siempre.
¿Qué cosa? Perdón.
Y más cuando confío en mi preparación.
Whenever the pressure is highest, the more fun that I have.
Nice. It's a good trait to have. We know how good you are. Is it difficult to be patient and wait for things to unfold?
Sí, la verdad es un poco difícil, usted sabe, esperar por cosas que tú sabes que puedes hacer y que no que por momentos que por cosas que puedes hacer y no es necesario esperar, you know. Es difícil un poco la espera.
That's a great question because sometimes it is hard to wait for things to happen when you know you can do certain things and you don't want to wait, but there is no other option but to wait.
There was talk that you were going to fight John Ryder next, who's a top opponent. Do you know what happened with that fight, and is that something that could still occur in the future?
No, yo pienso que sí sucede en el futuro. Y lo que ocurrió fue que simplemente él estuvo poniendo muchas excusas, muchas quejas, como que, tú sabes, no, que primero dijo que si no era un buen oponente para él, que si no era digno de pelear con él, y después que si creo que quería una bolsa más, no me acuerdo, no recuerdo bien, creo que era algo sobre que yo no me merecía pelear con él. Y entonces fue cuando el equipo de trabajo decidió, okay, entonces no, ¿sabes? Buscamos otra opción porque no vamos a estar esperando, perdiendo el tiempo, you know.
I do hope that it happens in the future, but you know what the problem was? Too many excuses. I wasn't the right opponent for him, or this or that, and there was a point where my team and I decided, you know what, we're just gonna look for another opponent because we don't have forever to wait for him. So whenever he's up for the challenge, I'll be ready.
Well, hopefully we see that soon. More importantly, we can't wait to see your return on June 27th on Fox. David, thank you so much for taking the time out to do this, and we hope to have you back on the show again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, David. Thank you. That is going to do it for this week's episode. We want to thank Derrick James and David Morrell Jr. for joining us, and we want to thank you for listening. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment on the PBC Podcast on whichever platform you found us on. We're available on all of them, including YouTube. So as always, check back in next week for more interviews and more boxing talk right here on the PBC Podcast.